Hi, this is Peter Wooding coming to you from the communications room here at Christian Concern on a very historic day as the government will be voting on the marriage same-sex couples bill tonight. Right now in the background you can see a very heated debate going on being coordinated by Maria Miller, Women and Equalities Minister. Luke and Peter on our communications team are giving updates on Twitter and Facebook. So what's been going on so far, Luke?
Well, it's only just started at the moment, so we're just basically updating people on the latest developments and what points people are bringing up. So any key points, we're tweeting it on the Christian Concern Twitter page.
We've got a few people on the 1 o'clock programme, so checking Adam Bolton, someone's with him on Sky News, keeping abreast of the news and keeping our supporters abreast of what's happening for the vote later on at 7. So, yeah, just letting people know what's happening so they can be involved.
Christians stand for the truth, and in that stand bear witness to the truth of the Lord Jesus.
I have some thoughts on it, yes. But I'm eating my lunch at the moment.
Gosh, I'm just praying. I'm just praying that somehow there'll be a miracle, and if not, that we'll be ready for the onslaught. Pray for David Cameron, he needs to be saved.
Oh, thank you for waiting for me, everyone.
I think that there's a real risk to civil liberties, and in a liberal democracy we want people to have freedom of thought and freedom of expression, and I think there's a lot of people who, for various reasons, including faith, but also for some people with no faith, is that they don't agree with same-sex marriage, and people are now losing the ability to have that opinion, and that's very concerning for freedom.
Well, my daughter is a teacher, and she is really concerned by the effect that this will have on what she can actually teach in the classroom with a freedom of conscience. It's a conscience issue. I also think it's going to be a complete disaster for the Conservative Party, because there is no way that the ethnic minorities, for example, will be able to in any way, shape or form support this, and so they will not be voting for the Conservatives either.
Well, there's lots of it. It's in all of the newspapers and all of the TV and radio, and so we've got a big job trying to capture all of it so that we've got it for our records and for our media centre.
It saddens me because it has brought the nation into a place that I don't think we ought to be at this moment, considering the financial challenges that families are going through at a time like this. Is an institution ordained by God himself that precedes us. And for any government to think that they have a right to redefine that is sad for a country even to think such things. Now, to pass it to the law, I hope it doesn't, is catastrophic for us as a nation.
So we've been downstairs, we're back in the communications room, very busy, and here's the debates still going on. Andrea Williams is keenly watching what's happening today while she eats her lunch. What are your thoughts on what's been discussed so far, some of the points being made?
Well, there you are. I'm speechless. It's extraordinarily sad. Some of the things that Yvette Cooper is saying are very, very, well, they're sad, they're untrue. This notion that 80% of people under 50 would say are in favour of gay marriage. If you just look at the screen, this is our Parliament. Our Parliament is pushing through legislation that will dismantle the fundamental fabric of our society. I think it's a very sad day for Great Britain.
I know an email's just gone out encouraging all Christian Concern supporters to be praying. What should they be praying for today?
For the Lord to have mercy, for the Lord to intervene, because humanly speaking, this vote can't be won. And when you hear the way in which those that are objecting, who are seeking to intervene in this debate, are being pushed down and shut down, then you realise that it's not going to be won this afternoon by way of the human vote. So God has to do something quite extraordinary. And indeed, all the political commentators are saying that it's not going to be won in the Lords either. So we have to pray and believe that prayer works and that God can do something quite extraordinary. If this legislation is passed today, will the churches at last wake up? Will we find our voice? Will we believe that in praying, the Lord hears us and can intervene, because we actually need something quite supernatural to occur. It cannot be done by way of human campaigning, by way of human ingenuity. So we've got to cry out to the Lord to do something absolutely extraordinary. That's what we need to do. That's what we're asking him to do. My other fear is, if by some miracle the Lord spared us, would we as a church remain lukewarm? It's because we are lukewarm that we find ourselves in this situation today. It's because we've not advocated for marriage. It's because we've not pointed to the picture of the Lord Jesus Christ as the bridegroom serving his bride. Hello, I'm Andrea Williams. Welcome to this week's edition of Christian Weekly News. Today we're going to be discussing a very difficult topic in many ways, a controversial topic at least, that of the rise of radical Islam in our nation, across Europe indeed, as an issue globally. And of course we do that against the backdrop of the truth, the exclusive claims of Jesus Christ. He says that he is the way, the truth and the life, and that no man comes to the Father but by him. And indeed our nation of Great Britain was founded on that precept, on that truth. But in many ways we have strayed so far from that now. Somebody who has been in the public arena actually proclaiming the truth of Christ, but actually seeking to expose the rise of radical Islam in Great Britain is Alan Craig. Welcome today to our programme, Alan Craig.
Good to be with you, Andrea.
Yeah, good.
You choose your topics, don't you?
I know, well this is quite a tough one, but you have been at the heart of a battle on this in East London now for the past 6 years or so.
7 years, I think.
Yes, I mean it was anticipated, was it not, that there was going to be a mega mosque for the Olympics, that it was actually going to be the largest place of worship in the whole of Europe. That's right?
That was the plan. Originally the plans were going to be 40,000 capacity. In fact, they said between 40 and 70,000 capacity.
Yes, I remember that very clearly.
And there was some satisfaction to us that when they started reducing the size of it, they started bringing down the figures on the size of it, and they said it was because of local opposition, which we took as a sort of backhanded compliment.
Yes.
So we've been making much noise and sort of exposing the nature of the group and what they wanted to do with this particular site. And they brought down the size, and the latest size now is just under 10,000. That's what they're proposing.
Yes, and I think that, again, one of the things that we find with the building of mosques generally is that they're built in a way or in a location that is meant to be strategic, that is meant to be a bit iconic. So the whole idea behind this mosque originally was that the eyes of the world would be watching London, and that they would have a very unique place here in London at the heart of the Olympics. Well, the Olympics have come and gone, of course, but actually that they would be there, that people would be able to see that this was the largest place of worship across Europe in a nation that, of course, is known as Christian.
And they've had this particular group, which is known as Tablighi Jamaat, they've had their eyes on London, specifically
Yes.
London, for decades. They wanted 3 big global centres, one back in the Middle East, one back in India, which is where they're founded, one in the Middle East at Mecca, and then London. And those were their 3 centres. This was the last one of their triumvirate. And so we're quite pleased that for the moment, it's stopped for the moment. We have to wait and see. They'll be back. But,
Yes. Tell us a little bit about the nature of this particular group.
No, I mean, they're rather typical of what is concerned, what you're mentioning, about this sort of radical, very narrow, hardline Islam. I want to say they're not a terrorist group. People say they're not a terrorist group, and I'm very happy to say that they're not a terrorist group. However, back in Pakistan, they're closely linked with terrorist groups. The Pakistan Taliban, Harkat al-Mujahideen, other banned groups like that. They were Deobandi Muslims closely associated with them. And secondly, a significant number of Tablighi Jamaat followers have gone on and been involved in some sort of planned or actual atrocities around the world. So there's very close alignment with terrorism, although they themselves are not a terrorist organisation.
And I think what's actually concerning is that we find, don't we, in places where there are mosques or where there are Islamic groups, even on campuses across in our country, we find that young Muslims
and indeed young non-Muslims become Muslim, get radicalised, and we hear story after story of that, do we not?
We do. I mean, it's one of the real problems in this global rise of what I like to call assertive Islam, asserting itself. I've been to Nigeria 3 times recently. You see what's happening in northern Nigeria and how this assertive Islam is spilling down from north. I've been to Pakistan and you see it there, just everywhere in Pakistan and so on. And it's a global phenomenon. It happens in the back streets of Bradford. It happens in East London where I live and so on. It's a very sort of fundamentalist Islam. And I think it's really important for us to say that there are other Muslims who aren't like that at all. I meet significant numbers of progressive, westernized Muslims who want to develop what they call a European or a British Islam, which accepts the basic norms of our society. And they can reconcile and do reconcile that with Islam. I'm not fully sure how they do that, but that's not my business. They're good people. And in many ways, I say to myself, well, which is going to win, the growth of the assertive Islam, or the radical Islam, or these progressive? And I have to say, my own view from my own experience in East End of London and elsewhere is that it's the radicals, the assertive, the traditional ones, the narrow ones, that are winning the game, hands down.
I think something that is very concerning, we can look to somewhere like northern Nigeria, where in the past year we've seen just the most terrible atrocities committed against the church. And against Christians, churches bombed out, Christians massacred, Christians tortured. There, we can look at a society which was open, which was peaceful, and we can see this kind of rise of an assertive Islam, which has led to this kind of atrocity and barbarism. And that is highly concerning, is it not?
Sure. I mean, it was just over a decade ago, 10, 12 years ago, that 12 of the northern states of Nigeria announced they were going to be Sharia states. They were going to have Sharia law for everybody, which caused an uproar amongst many of the Christians because immediately they become dhimmis, they become second-class citizens. And in that environment, it's quite a fertile environment for more extremist groups like Boko Haram, which is the main extremist group in northern Nigeria at the moment, or the most public one. It gives them a chance for them to flourish and to grow and to become more extreme. I think the interesting thing, though, Andrew, is I think what do we as Christians do about it? And the thing I would urge upon, what my own biggest experience has been with the Mega Mosque, and what I would urge upon Christians is twofold. Firstly, I like to talk about the 2 pillars of love and truth, that we need to speak the truth and be unafraid, unashamed of speaking the truth, no matter how politically incorrect it is. So what you see on the evidence in front of you, you need to say and speak out. But also we need to do so in love. It's absolutely essential that we're not stereotyping all Muslims. We respect Muslims. All the way through, I've tried to reach out the right hand of friendship to Muslims. At a personal level, I've never criticized them as people. I criticize their ideology. I criticize their plans for the mosque and so on, quite robustly, quite rudely at times, but never the people. Because at the end of the day, Jesus died for them. Christ died for their sins the same as he does. He loves them as much as he loves you and me. And the fact that we're Christians makes no difference to him. He loves them, and therefore we should too. And my own experience is that by living on both the truth and love, or to put it in a political context, respect for the Muslims as people, and saying they have rights the same, most of them want to do the same as you and me. They want to bring up their kids, have a job, go on holiday, and so on and so forth. While we respect them as that, then actually it enabled me and my colleagues to carve a path that was different from EDL, BNP, and so on, that sort of come over the rise and shout hatred through a megaphone and then go off home again. You know what I mean?
Yes,
and I think that's, I'm sure those principles must be, because they're biblical principles.
Yes.
Wherever we go, truth and love, truth and love.
Truth and love, truth and love. That's indeed how we need to season our every action, is it not? And never more so than now. It's absolutely right, Alan, that Jesus died for every one of us. He died on the cross because he loved us so much. God, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth on him would not perish but have everlasting life. How much we hope that, for every individual, for every Muslim here in this country, how much we would love to see them saved, brought into the hope that is the Lord Jesus Christ. Alan has been so active in resisting this Mega Mosque. Let's now watch a film of the story of the Mega Mosque.
Despite thousands of Muslims protesting outside Newham Town Hall during a planning meeting, the Council's Strategic Development Committee voted against plans to build a mega mosque in West Ham in East London. The decision came after recommendations from Newham Council officers that the application should be rejected, saying the proposed 12,000 capacity mosque didn't fit with their planning policies to regenerate the area. Speaking from the site of the proposed development, former Newham councillor Alan Craig, campaign director of Mega Mosque No Thanks, welcomed the decision.
I'm both glad and grateful that the council have voted against. They had to really in some ways because the plans are so outrageous and so against the council's own plans for this area that in many ways they had to reject it. My concern now is what they will do, what Tablighi Jamaat and their trustees will do. I think it's highly likely they'll appeal up over the heads of Newham Council, perhaps the Planning Inspectorate, perhaps the Mayor of London. Who knows what they'll do next, and we'll watch that very closely.
So why did Mr Craig launch this campaign in the first place?
We started the campaign probably 6 years ago now, when Tablighi Jamaat, the proposers of the mosque, announced that they wanted to construct a mosque of some 40 to 70,000 capacity. Our objection to the proposal was first of all about the size. Although they have slimmed down the size to just under 10,000 capacity now from the 40 to 70,000 they were talking about, it's still far, far bigger than is required in this area. Their own architect says it's going to be the size of Battersea Power Station. But secondly, there's the nature of the group. Tablighi Jamaat is a very fundamentalist group and it's a very separatist group. It teaches its followers that they should separate out from non-Muslims. They should be isolated from non-Muslims if they want to be good Muslims themselves. Well, that runs absolutely against any sort of integration or community cohesion that we would want round here.
So how does Alan believe people should take practical steps against the threat of radical Islamism across the country?
I think the first thing I say regularly wherever I go is Christians' duty is to follow what Jesus said. We should love our neighbour, and our neighbour, it doesn't matter who our neighbour is, they can be a Muslim, they can be an atheist, be a Hindu or another Christian. We should love our neighbour, and that's really important. So we have nothing against individual Muslims at all. But there is a growing trend of this radical Islam, as we're seeing around the world, this sort of aggressive, assertive Islam. And certainly we see it here in the East End of London, a rising tide of it. And it needs confronting, it needs challenging wherever it is. And it's our job, not only as Christians, but as citizens, to challenge it. It is intolerant, it is supremacist, as I was saying about Tablighi Jamaat. It wants Islam to dominate the world and to dominate our community. It needs fronting, challenging and dismembering, and that's our job.
So despite a victory for Alan Craig's campaign in Newham, the challenge remains to ensure all communities throughout the UK are protected against any form of radical Islamism.
Welcome back to this edition of Christian Weekly News. It's great to have Alan Craig with us. He has been courageously and fearlessly speaking truth and love in the public sphere on this issue of Islam now over many, many years. And of course, one of the issues that is perhaps, again, most difficult to address, but is this creeping rise of the use of Sharia law in our nation. So that in fact what we're getting is a two-tier system. We get our English law, we're all subject to, but we find that where there are Muslim enclaves, that there Sharia law is operating, and that perhaps naively many British citizens and even many British lawmakers think that's all right if a constituency, if a community want to self-regulate, then they should be free to do so. If they want to use Sharia law, they should be free to do so. Why do you think they perhaps should not be? Why are you campaigning, indeed, as we are supporting Baroness Cox, into ensuring that Sharia law does not take a foothold in this country?
Well, I mean, there are two reasons. Firstly, no cohesive society can have sort of parallel legal systems.
Yeah.
You have one on here and one there, and sort of pick and mix whatever you want to take. And if I fancy a bit of Islamic law, I'll go over there, and if I don't, I'll go over the We can't afford to do that. No society. So it's a question about stopping the parallel legal systems, and that's a major issue. The second thing, which I've been very much involved with Baroness Cox, is the whole thing about discrimination within Sharia law, and particularly discrimination against women. I mean, it's taken a long time to get equal rights for women, but it's now something we offer as a society, equal rights for women. And yet under the Islamic Sharia system, women don't have equal rights. And when it's a question of child custody, or whether it's just a question of testimony in court, in a Sharia court, a woman's testimony, a Muslim woman's testimony, is only worth that of half of a man. Well, that simply isn't acceptable. And I've met with women who come here and they say the situation for them as Muslim women is worse in this country than it is back in their home country. The imposition of Sharia within the communities, Muslim communities in this country, is far worse. Now that's something we need to tackle. I mean, for people to come here, and for women to come here and be worse off in this country than they are back in their home country of Pakistan or somewhere, is just absolutely extraordinary.
It is extraordinary, isn't it, that we should be having women in this country who do not feel protected by our own law, but actually live subject to perhaps a harsher law than they might find back in Pakistan, and they live in fear, perhaps they don't speak the language. And we need, as a civilised nation, and as a people that are welcoming and as a people that care, we need to protect those women. We need to go out of our way to ensure that they can access justice. As Alan says, truth and love, that they can access a place where they feel safe. It's so important that we seek to point out what's happening, because I think that really, provided we say just let that continue to go on because the community is self-regulating, then what we will find is so many women living in this kind of fear.
And also, as Christians, I know it's a sensitive area, and people go, oh, you know, what's going on? But as Christians, we ought always to be on the side of the vulnerable, of the marginalised, and so on. Here is a whole group of them, half of a subpopulation here, the Muslim women, who are being marginalised, and they're vulnerable, and they're being discriminated against. Now, if we can't stand up for them and say, no matter what people think about it, we're going to stand up for them, then who are we?
And so we will stand up for these women. We will stand up for these women. And now I'd like to introduce to you a short video of some of the ramifications and implications of Sharia law.
In recent years, a number of high-profile figures in British public life have appeared to express support for the practice of Sharia law in this country. But what is Sharia law, and is there a place for Sharia in the UK? Sharia law is a detailed system of religious law developed by Muslim scholars in the first 3 centuries of Islam. It covers everything from religion, hygiene, dietary laws, to dress code, family and social life, finance and politics. What few realise is that here in the UK, Sharia law is already being practiced, and Sharia courts already enjoy some legal recognition. Muslim arbitration tribunals and Sharia councils are adjudicating on civil, commercial and family matters, including contractual disputes, divorce and domestic violence. Some of their rulings are now legally enforceable in Britain. Unfortunately, the use of Sharia law in the UK is not good news. Equality before the law for all, regardless of sex, race or religion, is one of Britain's enduring principles. However, in practice, the Sharia system treats women very differently from men. A woman's evidence counts for half that of a man. Divorce for women is very difficult while being very easy for men. The husband has the right to divorce his wife for any reason by simply pronouncing the divorce 3 times, whereas the wife must apply to the court for a divorce. Custody of any children passes automatically to the man once the children have attained the age of 7, and the mother has no rights of access. In disputes to do with inheritance, a woman is entitled to half the property the man is. In cases of divorce, a woman has no rights to any of the family property. In cases of rape, 4 male witnesses are needed to substantiate a woman's complaint, and only a Muslim male witness's evidence is admissible. These examples contradict key principles of justice, freedom, and equality for all before the law. The use of Sharia law is fundamentally inconsistent with the UK's legal framework. Please support the campaign to strengthen the law to protect equality and freedom for all.
So, Alan, as we face this massive challenge here in the United Kingdom, we see an increasingly secular society. We see the rise of radical Islam. What do we do in that situation? What would be your advice?
As Christians, we need more and more to speak up, and we need more and more Christians to speak up. A secular society is a relativist society. It has no roots, it has no strength to confront Islam. Islam isn't going to go away easily. Our problem is not Islam as a whole. As a society, it's the rising tide of radical Islam. And secular society isn't up to facing that. It's only Christians that have even deeper roots that can actually stand up. So it comes back to those roots. We stand up in truth and love, and we will insist on speaking the truth in love wherever we find it.
Let's be bold in speaking truth in love. Let's lovingly speak truth. Let's never, no never, be ashamed of the gospel. Please join us at Christian Concern as we speak and stand for truth in the public sphere today, tomorrow, and for as long as it takes. Thank you for joining us today.